Hello, I'm very excited to have a very special guest today on the Choose to Prevail show. His name is Eli Marcus, and he is the son of a Holocaust survivor. He had a difficult childhood in many regards, but something that really excites me about his story is that he was able to overcome what can only be described as crippling shyness to become an extraordinary, very, very, very accomplished sales and networking expert. So it was really going from one extreme to the other extreme, and he is now hugely successful in his chosen field. Welcome, Eli.
Well, thank you for that great introduction, Sandy. I can't wait to motivate and inspire your audience.
That's fantastic. I want to ask you, Eli, I mean, as much as I know that perhaps it's something that you would rather forget, but can you tell us a little bit about your childhood, what your life was like growing up? It cannot have been easy, and certainly your parents, well, they definitely went through a very grueling time.
Yeah. So, in my father's best year, I think he may have earned about $9,000. So we didn't exactly grow up with a silver spoon in our mouth, if you can imagine. And growing up, I was painfully shy. I was the kind of kid that sat in the back of the classroom and thought that if the teacher called on me, that was worse than death. So I kind of hid myself from the teacher. And then even the thought that the teacher would call on me got me to sort of my heart palpitating, my hands were sweating. To me, it was the worst thing in the world. And I didn't like it because all the kids in the front of the class seemed to have all the fun. The kids that had their hand raised, it said, pick on me, pick me, please. I have the answer. I was the opposite. So I had a report card and I kind of aced everything on the report card except for one thing. And I never even heard of it because it's not even a subject, something called initiative. And I had to look it up. What is initiative? I had to look up, and back in the old days, those Funkin' Wagnall's dictionary. And it showed somebody who just has a lack of doing things. And it bothered me. And I said, something, I don't want to be that person failing anything. And I started living in the bookstore, picking up every self-help book I could, and just finding if there was a way to break out of this shyness. And I did.
Let me ask you, I'm very curious because it seems to me that your experience was more on the extreme side. Certainly, many people feel very self-conscious when speaking in public, but that feeling of literally like you're going to pass out, the palpitations, the thing that you described, I experienced it myself, and I have to say that it's something very, very extreme. And I would like to ask you what it was that you found in these books, or what it was that you found that enabled you to actually move past this crippling fear.
That's a great question, Sandy. And for me, it became who was going to be my mentor from a distance? Who am I going to read that's going to make a difference? Who do I admire? And it was always the motivational speakers. So that's the key. Are you going to face your fear head on, or are you going to hide from your fears? So I was hiding from my fears, and all it did is beget more fears. When I started confronting the fears, feel the fear and do it anyway. It doesn't say eliminate the fear. It means that feel it, acknowledge it, and go with it anyway, despite the fear. It's not going to kill you. And so when I started to feel the fear, acknowledge it, not be broken by the fear, embracing the fear even, even with the palpitations and still doing it. Once I got through to the other side, I felt good about myself. The worst thing you can do is back away from the fear, not confront it, and then look and say, what if? That's the worst feeling in the world.
Oh, absolutely. It's been said many times that people regret not doing something so much more than they regret actually doing something, regardless of the outcome, even.
That's absolutely true. You definitely will regret the things you don't. It's better to have tried and fail than never to have tried at all. The only things I regret in my life are not the things that I fail. It's the things that I didn't get enough courage to challenge.
I do want to ask you, I feel that you really went from one extreme to the total opposite. I understand that you have friends these days that go as far as to call you the mayor of Times Square because you're so gregarious now, you're so sociable, you're always looking to make friends and connections in general. I think that that's hugely important. Something we have seen throughout this show is that many people mention that surrounding oneself with supportive people, with kind people, is really the cornerstone of their success or just their motivation in general. How were you able to do that? And what advice would you give to people that are feeling like they don't have friends or they have very few friends? What would you do?
Great question, Sandy. I'm going to give you 3 words: drop your agendas. Because we go into most situations with some sort of preconceived agenda. We have expectations of what we think the scenario is supposed to unfold like. If you drop that, go in as a human being, a spiritual person, lead with your spirituality, lead with your kindness, lead with your love, people will naturally gravitate to you. People gravitate to your energy. They don't gravitate to your knowledge. They gravitate more to your energy. People will gravitate to you if you are the kind of person who shows enthusiasm and interest towards them. Everybody wants to be admired. Everybody wants to be loved. Show people compassion, show people empathy, and listen. People would rather have a listener most of the time than a talker. So if you listen to people's issues, ask them questions. People rarely ask me questions except when I'm on a talk show like this. They don't understand how I tick. If they ask me more questions, they'll find out so much more. Because if you don't ask questions, you're doing the age-old assumption. You know what that breaks down to.
Hmm, that assumption. Tell me about that.
Well, when you assume things, you're generally wrong because how could you know? You don't have a crystal ball. So the quickest way to a relationship is by asking questions because first of all, people are flattered that you're taking an interest in them. And people want to talk about themselves. Let them talk about themselves and always find something complimentary. Now, I don't mean false flattery. Everybody's got something that you can compliment them about, whether it's that incredible book you have in the background, Choose to Prevail, which is fascinating, this great title, because it's a choice that you literally make. Because making no choice in life is a choice, and it's a bad choice. So it's better to make decisions and better to make them quickly than to make no decision and stay in that homeostasis where you're going nowhere.
Exactly, basically in a holding pattern, and that's no way to live. You really do need to take action, as you very clearly did. In fact, I need to ask you because I'm very impressed. I know that you have sold millions upon millions of dollars worth of advertising, and that is no easy feat. I have to say that sales skills are something very unique, and I feel that they translate over into other fields. If you're an excellent salesperson, it's very clear that you're very persuasive, and that very same skill can easily transfer over into any kind of business you might find yourself in. What would you suggest for people that are looking to improve their sales skills in general? It seems to me that it's something very difficult, at least to me.
I would recommend they may consider burning some of the books that they buy on closing. And I recommend that they go contrarian like I did. I go against the grain because when I'm in a selling situation, I don't look at myself as selling. Nobody wants to be sold to. Nobody likes that image of that insurance salesman or that car salesman selling them something. People want to buy, but they want somebody who's strong and has knowledge, and they want people to be consultative with them. So I'm more of a consultative person. I'm somebody who's nurturing. I'm somebody who's giving people knowledge and information, and I'm putting them in a better position for them to buy rather than for me to sell.
That's very interesting. So perhaps maybe anticipating what they might need rather than, going with your agenda. As you were saying, drop your agenda. Would that apply to this situation as well?
Absolutely. Drop the agenda and listen closely to what the other person needs and then show them a better way. People want to be paid attention to. So instead of pitching them, why not give them an article that can help them? Why not give them a referral or a lead or something which doesn't cost you anything, just a little time and effort? Do it contrarian to what everybody's so fixated on the bottom line. And people can smell that a mile away. Nobody wants to be sold by somebody who's interested in lining their pockets. Somebody
Exactly.
you want to have a transaction with somebody who's interested in you first, them second. So when I talk to somebody, I don't give the impression that it's about me. It's not about me. It's about them first. If they cannot be pleased, if they cannot be satisfied, if they cannot be served properly, then I don't deserve a commission. I don't deserve to earn anything.
Very interesting. That's a wonderful mindset in general, I think. I have to ask you something I'm very curious about. It seems to me that you're a very high energy person, which is also something very appealing, it seems to me. And it's clear to everybody that you come in contact with, as I was saying, that you're very social, very outgoing. At least that's the impression that you give. I have to wonder over these past many months when many people have been under some form of lockdown based upon the COVID pandemic scare. What was that like for you, both personally as a very friendly person and professionally as somebody that works in different fields?
Well, whenever there's adversity in life, there is equal opportunity to make something. And often the greatest things in life come out of adversity. So rather than to immerse yourself into the depression of the adversity, why not uplift yourself and create something new and fabulous that you probably wouldn't have done otherwise? So COVID gave me an opportunity to focus on things that I wouldn't have otherwise. COVID gave me an opportunity to look at a novel that I haven't looked at in 30 years or read some pages. COVID gave me an opportunity to take my podcast out of mothballs and put it back out there to help inspire and improve people's lives. And there's no better time to have a podcast on motivation like I do than in a time when people need it the most. So it wouldn't have happened. Otherwise, it would have been business as usual. Sometimes we need to be woken up because we don't always wake ourselves up. We can go decades doing the same thing every day. It's Groundhog Day every day, Sandy. And sometimes we just need the universe or somebody up above to knock on our door and change the status quo.
That is very true. And for example, when it came to sales, I know that obviously by this point in your career, you're very selective as to what you might agree to do in that regard. But for example, what about people that may have been very active in sales? Perhaps they might have fantastic, very confident body language, or things that are making them more appealing in person, perhaps, than behind a computer screen. What advice would you give to people that are now having to work online in sales? Is there anything specific that they should need to do?
Well, first of all, in many ways, it's an advantage as much as it is a disadvantage because you have an opportunity to talk to more people. Because when you minus the time it might take to get dressed, to travel, to get to an office, to wait in the waiting room, that could be hours. Now you just get on a Zoom call at the exact time. Bingo, you're there. So it's not much different. You can develop a relationship and rapport the same way. Number one, listen to people. Number two, take an interest. Find out what is it we can do. And I use one word since COVID more than any other word, and that is collaborate. How can we collaborate? How can we create a mutually beneficial business alliance? Who has ever asked you, how can we create mutually beneficial business alliance. People don't say that. People are more interested in what people can do for them. When you make it, let's not even kid ourselves. I'm not here just for you, because some people will pretend they're just here for you. And that's a little false as well. It's mutual. We're here together. What can we do to uplift each other and make each other better? And that can come across real well on Zoom. So my best suggestion is, Sandy, is don't come in with preconceived notions and look at things that is disadvantage, turn it into an advantage.
Absolutely. I think that's an excellent mindset, Eli. It's something that definitely sets the tone for a very, let's say, positive outcome when you start off with the idea of something that can be beneficial to both parties. That's fantastic. I have to wonder, Eli, in your spare time, when you're not working in your different career paths, because I do know that you have a number of them. You're in media, but you're also certainly in sales, you're in the motivational field, definitely. I have to ask you, what are your hobbies or your interests? It seems to me that you might have different interests, and that also has allowed you to make many friends in different fields and perhaps develop a larger, richer network.
Well, my goal is to be as balanced as I can. I'm not going to tell you that I always achieve it, but it's my goal. So I'm sort of a self-help, geek. I love to read books on self-improvement, and I continuously read that. It helped me launch me on my path to where I have having a winner's mindset. I do as much reading on self-help. I never take for granted that I have all the knowledge. Then you have to nurture your body. So every morning, a must is to go out and exercise. I used to exercise 5, 6 o'clock at night, but you know what happens, Sandy? Things start getting in the way by the time 5 or 6 comes, and you say, I'll do it tomorrow. And then something else comes and you'll do it tomorrow, and you miss 3 days. So now I make it my first must in the morning. I have my glass of water, which is an absolute must, because you're not going to survive without that water. You just slept for 8 hours. And so you need the water. So you begin your day with a glass of water, get out there and do whatever form of exercise pleases you. Don't do what you think you're supposed to do, what other people are doing. Do what pleases you and makes you happy. And when I'm finished exercising, there is no better feeling. It's a feeling of accomplishment. So it's important to have mental accomplishments, and it's important to have physical accomplishment during the day.
How important this is, what you were mentioning about selecting a form of exercise that actually appeals to you. For example, in this day and age, a lot of people are interested in yoga. And to be honest, I never really got into that. For me, it's always been about weightlifting, resistance training. And I find that it puts me in a more um, interesting frame of mind, because when you're, giving it your all, when you're making this huge effort, your mind is not occupied by anything else. So it does have yoga like benefits while being something more in line with my personal taste. And I think that's something that all our viewers can definitely consider, just not following fitness trends necessarily, but finding a form of exercise that to them feels fun and exciting or relaxing, exhilarating or soothing, depending on their moods or their needs. And that makes a world of a difference. Sometimes people say, no, I don't have time. And I really like what you were saying, do it first thing in the morning before life gets in the way. Everybody can find their own scheduling, but that's definitely, and I agree, a must. It's not something that's negotiable. It makes a world of a difference. And let me ask you, how about time management? Because I'm guessing that a person like yourself that has millions of friends, and I repeat, so much so that some people consider you to be the mayor of Times Square, how do you divide your time among your many friends?
Well, I make it a priority that friends are important. Human beings are important more than business, more than money, more than pretty much anything else. Because what do we really have on this earth? Having all the marbles in life without anybody to share them with is pretty lonely. Having an anniversary, an important time in your life without sharing with anybody, that's pretty lonely. If you're not going to invest in people, how do you expect them to invest back in you? So there's nothing more important than the connections and the people that surround you. So I look at it as you have wants and you have musts. Two things, wants and a must. It's very different. A want is something that you think that you need. You don't necessarily need it. You want it, but you don't have to have it. A must is something you cannot sacrifice. You cannot sacrifice that glass of water in the morning. You cannot sacrifice going out there and exercising because it creates endorphins in the body, which gives you the high, gives you the energy. I used to think, like everybody else, that I have to have my espresso, my cappuccino to start my day. In fact, that's how I used to go out and sell. I used to pump myself full of caffeine. Now I pump myself full of exercise. And so I pump myself full of self-help books, full of inspiration, motivation. That's what gets me going, not the caffeine. I don't rely on artificial stimuli. I rely on natural things. And I use the word natural. Your food should be natural. It shouldn't come out of a jar. It shouldn't come out of a package. It shouldn't have more than 6 ingredients. It should come from a tree or the ground, and if it's not coming from there, it's second class as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, absolutely. It makes a world of a difference in how you feel and how you perform throughout the day, definitely. And I love the idea about using, let's say, natural things to pump oneself up before something important. In my case, it's often been music. You know how different people have a special song or a special type of music that really gets their blood pumping, and it's just an exciting way to go about your day, like with a soundtrack that'll give you like a little shot of inspiration. Do you have any favorite types of songs or favorite type of music that you might use for that purpose?
That's the Rocky thing. That's what gets me inspired. It pumps you up. It gets you going. How could you not be inspired? Eye of the Tiger, right? That's another one. Gets you going. So anything that pumps you up. And sometimes, look, it's just a sweet song, a love song, back from the 70s, like a Captain Tennille song, or a Simon and Garfunkel song, just something sweet, something with lyrics, that's what gets me going. You're absolutely right. Music gets the endorphins going as well. So why not put those earbuds in, listen to the music. And when you say, well, it's tough for me to get up and exercise. Well, life's not meant to be easy. It's not, and the tougher it is, the more rewarding it is, because the better you feel that you actually overcame it and accomplished it. So to get up in the morning, even though you don't want to go out and you run, you actually run, it gives you a lot better feeling than to spend the rest of the day saying, oh man, I would really have liked to have done that. And you kind of regret it. Don't live a life of regret, live a life of action.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree on that point. So important to actually see things through, not just think, I would like to do that. That sounds like fun, but actually execute what you have in mind, execute your plan. And it's so fantastic what you're saying about how sometimes doing something that seems a little bit difficult, like exercise, really ends up making you feel so fantastic when you're done. I suppose that is part of the appeal of Ironman events or all kinds of physical challenges that people choose to put themselves through. And I've done it. It's fantastic. I agree that maybe in the moment it's, well, maybe not the most relaxing feeling, but you do get such a hit of endorphins when it's once it's over that it's absolutely worth it. And I'm guessing that was also the way you felt initially when you did something that was very challenging, which was stepping away from the fear of public speaking. Maybe right after you did it successfully, it must have been like a fantastic feeling.
There's no greater high than to face one of your greatest fears and survive it. And you cannot grow as a person unless you face the things that scare you most. So whatever it is that scares you, I would go and face it. And if you need professional help facing it, there are many professionals out there. A lot of the things that we fear are subconscious. And so we don't even realize that they're lingering there. And there are plenty of coaches out there that dig into your subconscious. They could do it by hypnosis or a number of other means. And they will help to take those fears and get rid of them in most cases, or at least submerge them and make them something you can handle far better. So for me, if you run away from your fear, you'll never conquer it. There's only one way to approach it. That's head on. However, what I tell people is not to look at the macro picture. Look at it on a micro scale. So take it piece by piece. For instance, suppose you want to run a marathon, but you're scared. Oh my God, it's too much. How am I ever going to do that? Am I going to collapse? Your first goal is simply to run a couple of steps, see how it feels. Go back out there the next day, add upon. It's like a Lego puzzle. Just keep adding pieces until you don't look at it. If you're looking at the end result, well, that's great, but that would make my head spin to even think of getting to that level. You got to do it piece by piece by piece by piece by piece before you're looking at this gigantic thing that's just going to make you at some point frustrated or want to quit. So the idea is not to have you frustrated. The idea is to have you embracing each step along the way by doing it micro steps.
Absolutely. As the saying goes, how do you eat an elephant? Well, it's done one bite at a time. You cannot
Exactly.
just, right. It's the only way to do it. Um, it's very interesting what you were mentioning about how things in your past can be brought up and addressed with different techniques. It leads me to think about the idea that identity is not fixed or set in stone. I think, and I'm sure that you would agree, that we can reinvent ourselves whenever we so choose. And I wanted to ask you, because it seems to me that you personally underwent personal transformation and personal reinvention from the time you were a child up until today. What would you suggest to somebody that feels like they're stuck in a rut or they're not pleased with the way their life is going? Is there anything that they can do in the way they speak to themselves or about themselves that might make a difference?
They have to choose to prevail. And one of the things that you have to do is not buy into your own propaganda. You see, much of what stops us is our own propaganda, because somebody told us when we were 9 years old that we couldn't do something. It could have been a friend. It could have been parents. Kids can be very mean when you're younger. They could label you. Sometimes people buy into that label their entire life, and they don't get rid of that label. You have a choice. You can either stay with the labels that you've been given when you were younger. What are you buying into? What are you willing to let go? Let go of all of those labels. Let go of all that negative thoughts. Bask yourself in positive thinking. There's so much positivity in this world, but there's so much negativity. You have a choice. Most of us, for whatever reason, our minds gravitate towards the negative more times during the day than the positive. So you have to be proactive with your positivity. Your negativity is coming without being proactive. It's just almost a natural gut reaction that we have to compare, because when you go on Instagram and you go on Facebook and you see everybody's on their yachts and they're at poolside in their bikinis and they're out there doing all these glamorous things. Well, they don't show you the before and the after. So you think, well, what's missing in my life? Why don't I have what they have? And when you start thinking like that, you're defeated. So you have to be grateful for what you have. And every day you have to actually have gratitude. Give gratitude for what you have, acknowledge what you do have, because it's so easy to see what you don't have. So at the end of the day, it's a choice. It's all about our thinking. What the mind can conceive and believe, you can achieve. But if you can't conceive it and you don't believe it, you're not going to achieve it. And so, of course, a lot of people will say, but I try to. Well, until you actually start understanding and realizing that you came to this earth with insurmountable odds of conception, that means you are a miracle. It's not just the people. We think that the people that we see on the sports fields or in the movies, those are the people that have the miracles or deserve the miracles. No, we deserve the miracles. And you need to get to the point where you realize that you're a miracle and you deserve the miracle, and anything is possible that you put your mind to. And we have to stop worrying about a fear of success, a fear of failure. We just have to start and then let things flow. Most people get stuck in the stage that they don't even start. Nobody has a blueprint for success or life. None of us. The difference between the winners and everybody else is they start and they just allow the process to unfold. They just work the law of attraction. They surround themselves with good people, good thoughts, read good books, do the right things, and things flow. It doesn't mean you won't have problems along the way. The idea is to get off the canvas every time you're knocked down, get back up with that same positive attitude. Harder, easier said than done. I get it. But that's what champions do. They just get up off the canvas with less feeling of depression than everybody else.
I love that. And I love the boxing metaphor because how true that is. In reality, we need to learn to roll with the punches. We need to pick ourselves up with somebody's help or just on our own, up off of that canvas and just keep going. And my experience, at least, is that when things seem to not be going well, they might be leading us to even better things. And if something is not to our liking, it surely is not the end of that story because there's always the chance to do better and the chance to have things go exactly the way that we want them to.
You know, what's interesting is people think that they have to have the DNA of their parents. So therefore, if my grandfather and my father had diabetes, therefore I'm destined for diabetes. No, that's not true. You can break that pattern. Are the chances greater that potentially you'll get diabetes? Sure, because there is a genetic component, but it doesn't mean that that has to happen. You can break that by changing your environment. Your grandfather and your mother and your father may have a certain way that they ate. Maybe that no longer serves you. Maybe that was good 100 years ago when we had less research, but the research today is very conclusive that if you eat your greens every day, that's going to provide you with antioxidants that's going to help protect you against cancer, heart disease, diabetes, and a whole bunch of other problems. But if you continue to have your 2 pints of ice cream every day, then yeah, it's going to be tougher to break that DNA pattern.
Absolutely. I love that. And that is definitely something that applies to everything. In nutrition, it's very clear, but it does apply to pretty much any other field that one might feel stuck in or destined to
Break
be
the
in.
pattern.
Absolutely. Eli, it's been such a pleasure to speak with you. Is there any specific message that you would like to leave as a final message to our friends here at the Choose to Prevail show?
I would just like anybody listening today to understand that no matter what challenges that you're facing right now, no matter how hard it seems, no matter how impossible it seems for you to get to the other side, take it from a guy like me, brought up with, you know, basically in an environment of great challenge, somebody who was been voted the least likely person to succeed, certainly the least likely person to take an interview like this or to have his own podcast or to get up on stages and be a professional speaker or to be the world's top salesperson in his category. Believe me, nobody believed that I can do it. And least of all, I didn't believe that I can do it. But guess what? Not only did I do it, you shall do it. And the only thing you have to do is believe. That's your only homework. Just believe.
I love that, Eli. And absolutely, that is it. Choose to believe, and that is something that will get you where you want to go. Thank you, Eli.
Thank you, Sandy. You're the best. You have a choice to let things continue the way they did all along, get the same results. Or you have a choice to take action, prevail, despite what you might think are insurmountable odds. If anybody has overcome insurmountable odds, it's me, the shyest kid in the entire school, the person that people would have said there's no way he could ever succeed. And guess what? I did, because I made a choice at the end of the day. I made a choice not to accept the conditions in which I was born in or grew up under. I made a choice, and that choice was to choose to prevail.